Good evening, race fans. Thank you for tuning in to DRL TV. My name is Getty Buckner. I'll be joined tonight by Andy Short, and it will be our pleasure to bring you live action of the DRL Cup Series. Tonight, we are live from sunny Sonoma, California to bring you the Sonoma 110 44 laps. For the first time this season, these drivers will test their skills on a mighty road course, and there are no mightier road courses than that of Sonoma Raceway. With all the elevation changes and the fact that we are being challenged by an all-new track configuration, these drivers will be challenged in a whole new way. Let's not forget, this is the first time that these drivers are taking this brand new Cup package that was introduced this season to a track that features left and right-hand corners. Now alongside me tonight is a very special guest. Please welcome Andy Short into the broadcast booth. Andy, anytime you go to a track that is very familiar to you, such as Sonoma, but all of a sudden there's a new twist, such as a completely new configuration. What sort of challenges does that bring a driver coming to a place that they're familiar with, but yet is completely different from things they've visited in the past?
Well, I know myself, just remember the new configuration. If you're used to running the old configuration, make sure you're hitting those turns, make sure you're not spacing out, and remembering where that new
Yep.
the new carousel turn is. And number two, how it's going to affect the car. If you've never done a long race or any of that, you don't know how it's going to affect the tires. And if you watch the Cup race on Sunday, those guys were really wheeling it in there and putting a lot of heat in that right front tire. So how many laps can you get by really sliding it through there? So it'll be, I think we're in for a good race. And I think it'll be easy to see I think it'll be interesting to see how these guys attack the new configuration.
Yes, and of course, not an overly large field tonight. So far, we've got 10 drivers that are qualified, but let's take a trip around this new Sonoma Raceway with Mike Lemon as he is circling the racetrack right now, entering turn 2, going up this hill here. We're going to go into his cockpit view here. You can see there's so many blind corners, and that right there is going to be the most challenging. Here you're going to turn right. Normally you would be going straight into the short chute, but this is all new to these drivers this season. This going down here, a very fast pace, relatively flat, but again with the elevation changes, a relatively flat part of the track, but it has a lot of characteristics with bumps and things like that. Now when we go to this long straightaway here, different braking points are going to be key, and right here, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the most important part of the track. On Sunday, the real life drivers of the NASCAR series, that was the biggest opportunity to pass, was right here as Mike Lemon is circling through the S's here. This is all new. This is all familiar. This is part of the old configuration that we did use, as he takes that slight right-hander, and this is the most iconic turn in basically all of NASCAR, the tiny sharp hairpin. And that right there, that could be a place where a lot of drivers can gain or lose. They're really only in fourth gear for a very short amount of time. First gear coming up through these S's here, and then as they circle the track, it's going to be mostly second gear, a little bit of third gear, and only fourth gear at the end of these straightaways. So as Andy mentioned, tire management is going to be key, especially with those higher revs in those lower gears. But ladies and gentlemen, let's bring up the point standings here. We have Wade Hustad leading the points, but things have tightened up after Pocono. Thomas Harmon grabbing his second win of the season. Chris Lucky has 2 wins here tonight, and actually Chris Lucky is our current pole sitter by almost half a second, so he could be in store for a good run tonight. And just below these drivers, if you'll notice the 16 number there, that's where Anthony Burrows is. He is guaranteed a playoff spot because of the win total that he has, assuming that he does meet the race minimum. But just below that, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't have a win, you have to be above that 16 mark to make the playoffs. So Eric Hutton, Alex Russell, Hunter Johnson, Eli Hinton, kind of on the outside looking in at this point, and other drivers such as Eric Wolf, Spencer Tart, John Mullins, Chris James, you'll see just how tight it is down there between the 11 of John Theodore at 195 points behind our leader, and Spencer Tart at just 207. So not a whole lot of points separating those guys, Andy. And with a track of this size, the margin for error is still as thin as at any track, but here, there's so much ground to cover. There's so many blind corners. It's just one little mistake here can cost somebody a lot of spots, because another thing that we'll make note of during the broadcast is that there's not really full course cautions here. It's going to be most likely green flag from start to finish, but one thing that can happen, obviously, if there's a what we would deem as a situation where NASCAR would throw like a safety, they would need the safety crew for like a several car pileup or something, then we would throw the caution. But otherwise, tonight it's all strategy, it's all tire management, and we have 38 seconds left here qualifying. Just about all the drivers have qualified, and it looks like Chris Lucky is going to take this pole position away, and he will be in a prime spot. He and his brother Richard will start this front row, which I believe would be the first time this season that has happened, but he will be in a great position to start his journey here towards his third victory this season. Now, Andy, another thing to mention is we talked about, or we will talk about, is where you're at on track versus where you qualified. Qualifying here is huge, but Eric Wolf last year qualified almost dead last and still found his way to get into the top 5. Tonight, Eric Wolf starts third. If you can,
right.
You are a very, you're a seasoned veteran of iRacing. Talk about what it's like to start near the front versus having to deal with all the traffic and starting and back, if you can.
Each have their own advantages, and in the front, you're more prone to run your race. Obviously, you're not going to let anybody else dictate your race, but at the same time, if there was something, maybe you overshoot the pit box, maybe you get caught back in 6th, maybe with 12 or 10 laps to go, that's new territory for you. And maybe for a guy starting back, like a Joseph Held, a Wade Hustad, who have fought through the field all night, they know the passing points. They kind of know how to get around the place, to where maybe Chris Lucky's had an easy race up to that point and has to kind of either be patient and figure it out, or
Yep. No, that's
go from there.
That's a good point, and to back up a point that you mentioned off air as we were talking about, the important aspects of this race, saving those tires. If you're dealing with traffic, you're not going to be able to save tires as much as you're going to be grinding to get to the leaders. Whereas if, let's just say, if you take last night's race, like a Willem Byron, if he gets out to a decent lead, he doesn't have to deal with anything but the track itself, which is already difficult enough. But hey, let's take a break here and pull in our pole sitter, Chris Lucky, and get an interview with him. Chris Lucky, this is a DRL TV broadcast booth. Do you have a copy, sir?
Yeah, I got you.
Well, you get the pole by actually a decent margin over your brother, Richard Lucky. Starting on the front row here, we talked about the importance just now of track position. What does it mean to you to get that pole, and, what does it mean to you to, have that clean track to start with?
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing you just because I have my spotter so loud, but this is my favorite track. I love this car track combination. I've got a lot of seat time and experience in the Australian V8 supercars, so this is right up my alley. I'm a ringer, so hopefully me and Richie can get a lucky 1-2.
Well, if you can hear me, answer me this. Is there a strategy tonight for fuel mileage and things of that nature, or are you going to just kind of wing it tonight?
As long as the caution don't come out, we're just going to split it around lap 22. If Richard's close to me, he's probably going to try to short pit me. So we'll just keep an eye on that. But it's going to be 22 and 22. That's going to be the strategy.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your time. You have a good race, and hopefully we talk to you at the end of this thing as a top 3 finisher. Can you remind me what race chat you're in?
Yeah, Sonoma.
All right. Oh, Lucky Motorsports. I see it now. All right. I appreciate it, sir. Well, Andy, we are about half a lap to go until we go green. And again, a popular method for some of these races that we do here in the league setting is splitting it in half. Do you see a situation where someone would try to make it, like a 2-stop race instead of a 1, or is it, is that too much time lost there in pit road?
I'm going 1. If
Yeah.
it's a green flag race, I'm going 1.
Yeah, no.
I don't see tires being too much of a factor as far as fall off, but you save whatever the pit road delta is. It's pretty long if I remember, so you're probably losing total 45 to 50 seconds in the pits. Can you make that up on those new tires? I doubt it. So I'm going with the one-stop strategy, but obviously the cautions will dictate that. Hopefully we don't have any.
Right. Right. Well, we are just getting ready to set out as the pace car is getting ready to turn onto that, one of the more unique pit roads here. And these drivers will circle all the way around the hairpin, and we will start this 44-lap race for the DRL Cup Series here tonight. And we'll wait for the green flag and watch these drivers climb the hill here in turn 1, and green flag is out.
Be interesting to see, and it looks like Lucky got a good start. I was interested if Richard got the inside, if he could push it going up into this. He could get on the inside in turn 2 here, but...
Well, we'll see how long it takes to go single file. So far, almost 3 wide through turn 1. And that is with Wade Hustad. Mike Springer expected to have a good race. We'll see a few different names up front that we wouldn't normally see. Mike Springer being one of them. He normally, of course, is up front, but
we got a spin. Spencer Tart and Joseph Helt. Banging off a couple guys back there. Joseph Helt's turn around. He's the major one there.
Yeah, we saw that. We'll get a quick replay here of Joseph Helt. And it looks like Spencer Tart, again, kind of misjudged, maybe wheel hopped going into that right-hand turn, and that's the first time these drivers have made that right-hand turn, ever in a stock car. So
Yep.
Maybe a little bit of unexpected wheel hop or something of that nature. But either way, that takes the 0-2 out of the consideration for the time being. And also, let's see if we can get a quick look at Spencer Tart and kind of if we've got any damage here. We saw, we've seen wheel rubs really affect the stock car in real life. Here we don't have tire failure, but what that can do still is affect toe and camber, which is still a very real issue that these drivers could deal with if they have a little bit of damage here. It seems like Spencer is not in too bad a shape. Of course, in that brightly colored Sweet Tarts mobile, it will be hard to miss him this race. But we shift our focus to the lead. That is Chris Lucky, followed by Eric Wolf and Richard Lucky, who lost that second position basically right off of the gate before they entering turn 1. So far, just trying to follow the 24 through the chicane here. And behind these drivers, we have Logan McAnally, who's really had a really strong season. He's a newcomer to DRL this season, his DRL rookie. But we've seen him have dominant races at places like Texas. But of course, this is no Texas, Andy. This is a road course, and this will be the first of 3 that we visit this season.
And I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to that Roval coming up.
Right. No, yeah, the biggest question right now for the Roval, it will be, will iRacing be able to scan the track and institute the changes that NASCAR just made to it?
That's great.
On the backstretch, they made that chicane a lot deeper, so there'll be a lot more passing there, or at least opportunities for passing as we watch the 88 try to maybe outbrake the 41 there. And you can tell when a driver has a good grip of the track, a good handling car, basically by how they're driving the hairpin. All 3 of those leaders you saw were right on the rumble strips, but you'll see other guys, almost go, extremely wide, because of maybe discomfort in the racetrack or just the fact that they're not a road course guy.
And just going back to that previous instant, or the previous wreck we had earlier, Chris James with a little bit of front end damage, doesn't seem to be holding him back. And Gary actually got nicked in that too. I think he got into the back of somebody checking up, but he looks to be powering through as well. I don't think those guys will be affected.
All right, we're watching the 10 of Gary Cronenwet in 17th place. 17 or 18 cars took the, attempted to qualify. 17 got in the field. Caden Honeycutt missing the cutoff there. He is 2 laps down. And we are watching Gary take over Jim Westerfield for a spot. But right now, the tightest battle that we have is one involving Spencer Tart back here for 10th. And also up here in the top 5, Logan McAnally still right on the heels of Richard Lucky. Chris Lucky has now gapped Eric Wolf by 1.5 seconds. That lead has really stayed the same here in the last lap or two. Now, Andy, if you're in a situation where you kind of like, like Chris Lucky here, where you've got speed. Obviously, he qualified pole position. Is there such a thing as having a lead that's comfortable enough where you kind of back off a little bit, or is it one of those things where you just got to go the whole time?
I think each driver's different, but I guess it just depends how comfortable Chris is. Maybe if he can extend that to a 5 or 6 second advantage, and every so often check on that and make sure that buffer's still there. I think he can dial it back a little bit and still be okay. But it'll be interesting to see as it goes on if maybe Eric's just kind of running his pace and saving those tires, and maybe he can knock off some of this time that Chris is pulling on him later in the race.
Well, we are currently watching Bill Edwards. He's in for a pit stop here. We're going to try to see what happened. Not sure if it's going to show us here on the replay. Talking about the 75 S2R vehicle that is being driven by Bill Edwards. Looks like... I'm not seeing an issue straight away that would cause him to pit so early, but he's still on pit road. He's been on pit road for almost a full minute here. As we will move back to our live...
Richard Lucky was able to get around Eric Wolf in turn 7, I believe that was. He made a nice pass on the outside. Logan goes off a little bit there.
Logan are trying to become the newest member of the DRL landscaping crew. He tries to... I mean, that turn right there, and we're actually going to go on board with Rich Lucky for a lap here. And that turn right there is deceivingly slight, where you think you can kind of really haul the mail through there, but
really carry some speed through there, yeah.
But one little mess up, and you're
off.
In the dirt.
The good thing is there is a little bit of a runoff there, and Logan had the full car off, and he still had another half of the car to go before he hit anything, but definitely not what you want.
Right, now we're watching Richard Lucky. This is the newest section right here, this right-hand turn. This starts the new chicane. And you can see just how rough it is with Richard Lucky going through. It seems like he has great command of the car right now, 3 seconds behind his brother Chris.
And that's just a blind hill there. Just pick a spot. Remember where that spot is. When you hit the crest of the hill, that's when you turn, because you can't see the turn when you're behind the wheel.
That's exactly right. And then we go into the double apex, the double left-hand turn, heading into the S's. This is right where these guys would know. They're more familiar with, because this is part of the old layout now, starting with these S's here. And Richard Lucky shifts down into 3rd, I believe that is. Now this is right where we saw Logan get off track, is just this little left-hander here, and Richard navigates that expertly. Takes out a few cones in the process as he heads into that hairpin, and that, ladies and gentlemen, was a lap around Sonoma, the newest configuration. But right now, ladies and gentlemen, Chris Lucky, we talked about maybe taking it easy. What are his options as far as setting pace? That last time by, he extended his lead just a couple more tenths. So he answers our question by saying, nope, we're absolutely not going to slow down. And lap 6 of 44, we, suggesting that most drivers will pit around between lap 20, lap 24, depending on where they're at on the track, whether they're trying to short pit the guys in front of them. But we still have a few laps before that is concerned. Now, Andy, if people don't know already, you and I are actually teammates in the Grand National Series, which is run on Tuesdays. One thing that we haven't really had this year, we've had good luck, is like speeding penalties on pit road and pit road issues. But here tonight, if you speed on pit road, I mean, this is a very, very long pit road, and we will highlight it later as people do take that green flag pit stop. Is this a situation where you would maybe want to just maybe go a mile or two under the speed limit here, because you have that hairpin, which means you're going to have pie-shaped scoring loops. So you know, 1 mile an hour off, and you're going to have to come back down this very long pit road, wrap all the way around, and drive through, which could cost you probably 20 seconds, because I think pit road speed here is 35 miles an hour.
I believe it's 35. Yeah, so I'm cruising around 33 or 34. I'm getting into very deliberately getting into my pit box, and that if that costs me a second or two to avoid, for sure, you know, getting that 20-second penalty, that's fine with me.
Right.
Because you're either going to make that up on the track anyway, or you aren't at this place. So.
Well, Chris Lucky out to a commanding lead so far, 2.6 seconds, or 2.9 seconds rather. Eric Wolf is faded to third with Logan McAnally just behind him in the 88 Chevy. We will highlight him there. Of course, he's got those beautiful rookie stripes. A little bit of damage, I feel like, on the right side of that car, as we'll try to get a good look here as he circles the end of the chicane here. Maybe I'm just seeing things. Oh, it looks like maybe a wrinkle, if anything, so that will not affect.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay there.
Yeah. So.
Oh, he has gotten loose a little bit.
Yeah,
he was wheeling it through one of those turns.
Well, we're gonna see this. We're gonna see this.
Track,
yeah, we're gonna see that more and more as these rear tires continue to lose grip again. When you're running in gears such as second and third, which is not normally what these guys do. Normally they throw it in fourth and leave it. We're going to see a lot of that rear end slipping around as the heat build up in these tires, and the wear starts to affect these guys while they're accelerating and trying to get through the gears.
To your point about the heat in the tires, it looked like Logan was all over the back of Eric not just 2 laps ago, but now maybe he's got some heat in his tires. Maybe he's going to cool them off and give it another shot here in a couple laps. But I thought for sure we were going to see a pass for third there, and Logan just kind of slid around. So I think he might have something for Eric in another couple laps, but it'll be an interesting battle to watch as we go on.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point with catching any driver, especially one like Eric Wolf. Getting to his bumper is all great and good. Getting around him here, especially at Sonoma, where there's really only 2 or 3 key points of quality passing. What am I trying to say? There's only a few places on the track that you can really attempt a quality pass without putting yourself in jeopardy of creating damage or just taking somebody out blatantly. And being able to time that out on a 2-mile track, Andy, that's got to be tough.
You've really got to be patient, and when that opportunity comes, you have to seize it. If Logan was looking for a pass and slid those tires even just a bit, that blows the opportunity for him to get up on the inside of Eric Wolf, and that's that. Wait till the next lap, try it again, and it's tough being patient. But if you're not, that's the race. If you make a mistake in one of those other turns.
Right. No, and now following one of the more popular drivers that we have here in the Dynasty Racing League, John Theodore. I know he's a St. Louis Blues fan, so he will be happy to know that his new Blues here are Stanley Cup champions in the NHL hockey. Did a thorough job of beating my Bruins, but trying to take over the 10th spot of Chris James. And as we pulled up the points,
really close to those tires.
Yeah, no, and we pulled up the points earlier, and these are points that John Theodore needs. He's had a great season with speed and qualifying. It just seems like at the end of the race, whether it's a strategy thing or something like that, he kind of does. He hasn't been getting the finishes that he really, his speed would dictate that he would be getting. A lot of outside the top 10s where he was definitely a top 5 car with speed. Thinking about Michigan, going back to Michigan was a race. That's a prime example. But watching this battle here for a top 10 spot, and that is with the battered car of Chris James, DPR-driven Ford of Chris James there. And ahead, talking about guys that are having a great run, Dustin Musil, nicely in the top 10. Not a guy that is often in a spot to really claim a top 10. But here at the road course, we're going to see some drivers that are, can excel here at a place like maybe where we go next week, Chicagoland. It's certainly going to be very, very different from Sonoma.
Yeah, that's good for these guys that maybe aren't as experienced or know what's going on at the ovals to come out here and really show their stuff at the road courses. And hey, I know what I'm doing too, guys.
Right, now we've got Gary Cronenwet, who was in
and around goes Dustin Musil, just as we were talking about him. Oh no, looks like he got on the gas a little too soon coming out of the last turn there and just kind of spun it out. But
let's go on board with the 22 of Dustin Musil as he is circling the hairpin here. And it's weird. It's almost as if he didn't brake enough through the center, because he wasn't really spinning because he was on throttle. He was spinning because he was putting too much pressure on that right, or on that left rear rather, and just the momentum carried him around. Is very, very interesting, as he has now just come to a complete stop, let those cars go by, and now that puts him back to 13th spot. So that's more importantly, not just of losing a few positions, but the amount of time that he lost. He goes from being just around Chris James, who was at the time in 10th. He is now 3 seconds behind the 12th place driver of Joseph Helt, who's done a nice job of fighting back after that lap 1 spin.
And now if you're Dustin, you just got to take a deep breath, forget about that one, put the head down, know you got good race pace, and just carry on as best you can.
Right.
Unfortunate, but let's see if hopefully you can recover from that.
No, and it's difficult to see, again, to judge exactly what turned him around, but of course he's, the problem with that, and I've done it myself a few times, and we're going to watch him go into this next hairpin. All of a sudden you take that turn that wronged you, if you want to say, a little bit differently, a little bit more cautiously, and all of a sudden you go from having that race pace to maybe being a second off the pace because you're being so careful through that corner in which he spun through. So we'll watch him carry through this hairpin this time.
A little more gingerly, maybe. No, he attacked it pretty hard there.
Yeah, I think he understood that he didn't really track out as far as he did last time. So that's a good job out of the 22. So Chris Lucky, our leader, is 2.2 seconds ahead of his brother Richard Lucky. That is where they qualified 1-2. Eric Wolf, who also qualified third, is 5.2 seconds back from second place, 7.4 seconds back of Chris Lucky. That last time by, Chris Lucky still lighting it up with a 33.1. That's just really a second off of his best lap. So tire fall off not too huge. Richard Lucky, however, that last time by was actually a little bit faster than his brother, running a 132.5. So we saw Chris mentioned at the top of the broadcast that maybe if his brother's behind him close enough, that he would actually try to short pit him here. Andy, if you can answer me this, even though it is a road course, how important is clean air here? How hard should Richard Lucky push to get that lead, through pit strategy? Of course, doing that would maybe set him up for having a slightly older tires at the end of the race. What's the pros and cons there?
The pros are, if you can get that clean air, again, you're not in traffic, you're not chasing anybody, and you can dictate your own pace. The cons are, what is that pace? When he gains a half second or a quarter second, are you going to feel like you got to overwork the car, and maybe you start making some mistakes because you're getting nervous that he's catching you? So short pitting wouldn't be the worst, and he is gaining here and there on him. I believe that when we cut away to Dustin, that lead was at 2.7 or 2.9, so he has knocked another couple tenths out of the lead, but
and one thing to mention, that 88 is still tracking right behind that 44. They've been in this situation seemingly almost the whole race, and no matter what happens, no matter what part of the track, it looks like the 88 is just pushing it a little bit harder than some of these other guys. It seems like his car is a little bit more uncomfortable than some of the others. Now let's go to another battle here behind these guys, and that is Mike Springer trying to outbrake our points leader and defending champion Wade Hustad as they head down into turn 11. A little bit of rear tire breaking loose there as he accelerates past our champ, and that is the 12 of Mike Springer getting that position and putting himself in the top 5. And now Mike Springer is another one. Andy, I know you probably don't follow the Cup Series as closely as I do, being a broadcaster here, but that 12 car, he should have really, honestly, had a victory already this season. He is one of the cleanest racers that we have. Same with the 32 behind him. But of course, Mike Springer, he's going to be trying everything he can today. This is a good opportunity here. I know he likes Watkins Glen as well. He is a road course guy. This is actually what he does in real life. So you see him trying to attack and get that, get these spots as soon as he can. But he's just another one talking. Going back to the point we were making with John Theodore earlier, where he's really, his performance, his final finishing positions that he's had this season doesn't exactly dictate his skill level and the speed that he's brought all season long.
And to your point, being a clean racer, the broadcasts that I've watched, it's either Mike Springer's right up in the front, or he's the Kevin Harvick type, where you don't talk about him, and then with 5 to go, Mike Springer, there he is in the top 3, challenging for second and first.
Well,
so
I mean, no, that's exactly right. Well, while we've got a second, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're watching this lead start to tick down just a little bit. So when we return, maybe a little bit of battle for the lead, and certainly we'll get some green flag pit stops in just a few laps. This is Getty Buckner, Andy Short, DRL TV. Will return in just a few seconds. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to DRL TV with Getty Buckner and Andy Short here for the Sonoma 110. 15 laps into this 44-lap race. This is our first time that we're visiting a road course this season. We're currently on board with John Theodore, watching this battle for 9th and 8th. Coming up here, though, let's take a look at Thomas Harmon, how he's doing in 7th spot, coming off of a great Pocono win here in the Cup Series. But not only that, he actually swept the Pocono races this this season in all 3 series. I believe he's the only driver to win at the racetrack at a time where all 3 series are visiting it at the same time. So a little bit of momentum here, but Andy, if I can ask, with the driver that has momentum like Thomas Harmon has had, he's had great finishes the last few weeks. Is the road course, talking about like, superstitions of, auto sports, is a road course a place where like momentum, does anything for you, or is there just too much skill involved, for there really to be like, the quote unquote momentum and luck to carry over from a win at a Pocono race, which, obviously that's a giant triangle and certainly not a road course.
I think it's definitely a curveball for these guys, and maybe a guy that's comfortable racing ovals like Thomas Harmon knows that he's not going to challenge here like he does at a Michigan or in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe 8 for him might be, I always before the race set a goal. I'm happy finishing here regardless. So maybe his goal for this race, 6th, 7th, 8th. Hey, I came in, I ran the race, I finished. On to the next one.
Yeah, and also it's worth noting that most people, if you're just a regular viewer, may not know, but as points go, and again, noting at the top of the broadcast, and we'll bring them up here, how tight the points are. You do get an extra bonus point for not going off course or not running into somebody. That's called a 0x. So you do get a bonus point for having that. I'm not exactly sure how many drivers. Actually, I am sure. The top 3 drivers all have 0x. Logan has 1, and Thomas Harmon does have 2. So he's no longer really in the running of having a 0x. But Wade Hustad, who's just ahead of him, is. Wade Hustad has 0 incident points, so he could get that bonus point for the point standings. And if you can do that throughout a season, those really add up.
And a guy like Eric Wolf sitting on the brink there, that might be make or break for him. You don't think it comes down to 2, 3, 1 point, but if it does, you look back and say, wow, I'm one of the 2 or 3 guys that ran clean at Sonoma. That's why I'm in the chase at the end of the year.
Right. No, and just something that I looked at as you were talking about that, looking at lap times here. Chris and Richard Lucky both, they're almost marking out identical lap times, 1:33.4, a 1:33.3, and Eric Wolf in third. I mean, he ran a 1:33.6. No one's even coming close to these guys. Oh, as we see, the 75 takes a little bit of a spill. That is, of course, Bill Edwards. Now, ladies and gentlemen, next week, the next race of this series it'll be next Monday at Chicagoland Speedway, the SGK Racing 200, sponsored by also Fatal Concepts, which we're looking at the 75 right now. That is Bill Edwards. He is the CEO, if you will, of Fatal Concepts. He makes a lot of paints. Of course, the paint that he is running now. He hand makes all those paints. He actually handmade all the paints for the SGK team. So, he's done a great thing and joined the SGK team in sponsoring next week that is the Cup Series next Monday. Now, our next broadcast will be Wednesday. There is no race tomorrow for the Grand National Series as it is an off week for them. But on Wednesday, the 26th, at the same time that all these other broadcasts start, it'll be Gateway for the DRL Truck Series, and that will be, a crazy, crazy race. We saw last week at Iowa in the Truck Series, just the awesome attitude that these races take over from a short track perspective, and Gateway is going to be no different. It is one of the more unique ovals that we go to. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you like this broadcast, if you like a particular driver, or if you are just a fan of iRacing or auto sports in general, make sure you hit the subscribe and the notification icon there. That way you're notified anytime DRL TV goes live. Again, 3 times a week we broadcast. So now, Andy, you mentioned earlier during that commercial break, drivers like John Theodore, Spencer Tart, as we see John Theodore still just behind Chris James. this battle here, as we bring up the points one more time, these are very, very valuable points that these drivers can make or lose, and it's starting to get to that point where, like Eric Wolf, the reason he's in 15th is because he doesn't have 100% participation. He is not able to show up to every single race. But Spencer Tart, John Mullins, who he is actually not here tonight, so he will fall. Chris James, John Theodore, all these guys that are here every week and will be definitely a factor in the playoffs. I mean, this is huge. These are huge points for these guys.
Especially on Eric Hutton being the closest one. Unfortunate that he couldn't make it tonight, but yeah, for Eric, that's a huge opportunity running third. That's me. I'm sure he's aware of that, but
right.
Maybe taking a little easy, making sure you don't send it into the wall at any point that would cost you those points. But
right. Well, looking now away from the point standings here, we have 2 laps to go until, or maybe even 1 lap to go until some of these points or some of these drivers start pitting here. But we've seen Richard Lucky kind of pull in Chris Lucky just a bit. He'll gain a little bit, he'll lose a little bit here. If you are a driver at this racetrack, Andy, what part of the racetrack do you want to be good at? We've seen Chris Lucky and Richard Lucky kind of alternate at what end of the track they're fastest on. But if you're going to pick a spot that you are best at, is it going to be the first part of the racetrack, or is it going to be this last part?
If I'm average through the first part and I can make up ground in the S's and I have a better off of the hairpin, that's what I'm taking. If you can get off the hairpin better and make it through those S's clean every time, you're rocking and rolling. You're gaining time on people.
Yeah, I mean, well, right now, gaining time on people, we're talking about this battle, is shifting a little bit between these 2 drivers, but these 2 drivers are still in a class of their own. They both ran a 133 last lap. 134 is what Eric Wolf ran in third. Mike Springer right now, that last time by, he was actually one of the faster cars. So unfortunately, he is 19 seconds back of the lead in 5th place. But if he could kind of really push that pace on that last part of the this last stint here, as soon as these guys pit the second half of this race, we could see Mike Springer really make some noise here, especially maybe grabbing a podium spot here in the top 3.
And I've been watching Logan, and I don't know if he's just trying to track down Eric or what, or if he's just having fun out there, but he is just, I'll use the term wheeling, sliding that car every which way, and he's doing a heck of a job keeping it under control, but I think he might be losing a little bit of time to Mike Springer back there. But just still 4 seconds back, though.
Right.
I think he's got a decent gap, not to be worried about anything at the moment, but we'll see interested to see if that affects his rear grip as we come to the pit window.
Now, we talked about, pit stops are going to be the theme here for the next lap or 2. We talked about, taking it gingerly here on pit road, but obviously not everyone will. And, you could potentially, it's high risk, high reward here. If Chris Lucky goes into the pit stops with, kind of lackadaisically, trying to make sure that he doesn't, get a speeding penalty or something, as we watch Richard Lucky come in, and ladies and gentlemen,
Richard Lucky diving in.
We were going to highlight this pit road here. This is it.
And this is where, I mean, maybe for Richard, it's, hey, I'm going to come in and slide into my box and just try to make up as much time as he can, because he is so close to Chris, and to your point, can make up that time if Chris decides, hey, I'm the leader, let's keep it that way.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at, but you so expertly put, as I stumble over my words, the difference between kind of taking it easy and being safe on pit road and being more aggressive could be seconds. So that's kind of where I'm talking about with Mike Springer. We'll see exactly what his strategy is here. And also, we're going to see, which drivers stay out a couple extra laps. Who wants the fresher stuff at the end of this race? As we watch Richard Lucky,
he nailed it. Your point, he nailed that pit stop. So we'll see what Chris does when it's his time. But Richard just set the bar.
Right. No, absolutely. We're going to watch as Chris Lucky circles this third sector here, going through the S's, and that's a great shot there of the S's with Spencer Tart behind him. He is one lap down in 13th spot, but Sonoma is always it's such a beautiful track, but I don't know how many drivers really think it is beautiful because it is so challenging. Again, we're going to go to 3 road courses this year. Yep, and we're watching him come onto pit road. We're going to come to Sonoma, which we're at currently. We're going to go to Watkins Glen, which is always a fan favorite. And as a matter of fact, a lot of these drivers probably just participated in the 6 hour endurance race at the Glen, which was just this last weekend. And then, of course, we're going to go to the Roval at Charlotte, which that was definitely a fan favorite last year. Now, Eric Wolf wasn't able to take the lead before he passed Chris Lucky. We'll see if he ends up staying out another lap or two to try to get that bonus point. But right now we've got Eric Wolf as the leader. Logan is just behind him by 3.2 seconds. Again, those guys have 23 laps on their tires. And look at that battle. The 41 comes out just ahead of the 77.
Just got him, and there's being aggressive on pit road for you.
And that will be the lead once these pit stops cycle through. An incredible job by the 41.
Oh, this is exciting, man. I'm excited. This is going to be a battle. This is interesting.
Mike Springer has been on and off pit road. Now, just so you know, this is what it's about. The time spent on pit lane is what happens when you cross the commitment cone to the time where you exit onto the track. Richard Lucky spent 41.9 seconds on pit road. Chris Lucky spent 42.1 seconds on pit road, and you are looking at that difference right now.
He had about a 1.3 second lead going in, so sliding into the pit box, maybe keeping it at 35 the whole way down, taking a chance. Paid off for Richard in this case.
No, and that's incredible. Their pit stops were 14.2, 14.3 respectively. So the difference in what you're seeing now with the potential new leader is all driver on that pit road, whether it was entry. We see the 77 kind of take a little bit of a wider turn there, and that's what I'm talking about. The people that can run that hairpin along those rumble strips and really get on the throttle on exit without getting too wiggly. Those are going to be the drivers that have the advantage tonight. Now, incredibly, these drivers are just behind Wade Hustad, so they're going to catch Wade Hustad before Wade Hustad even makes a pit stop. Eric Wolf did end up staying out, and he will have led a lap, but he has not pitted yet either. The cars that have not pitted is Eric Wolf, Wade Hustad, Thomas Harmon in 5th, and Mike Lemon in 9th. Everyone else has pitted so far within the last 3 or 4 laps as Mike Lemon. Now he goes on pit road.
Where they caught Wade there was a little unfortunate for Richard as he was coming through the carousel. He had to check up there.
Mm-hmm. No, and actually, it's
doing his best to stay out of the way.
Last season it was actually lap traffic that ended up taking out one of our leaders. So just lap traffic here shouldn't be ignored or be taken lightly. As Chris James is on pit road, Eric Wolf has now dove into pit road. As we will follow him.
To complement the Lucky Brothers race pace here, it's not often we're talking about a clean car of Wade Hustad going a lap down, old tires or not.
Right, no, and he could potentially, as he ducks into pit road here, Eric Wolf gives that lead up to the 41, and the 41, I don't think he got that lap led that time by, so if he can make it around this 2-mile road course, he will get that bonus point for leading a lap. And again, as I continue to shuffle these point standings into the frame, you can see that would be very, very good, as he would be able, he's trying to gap Dustin Musil in the point standings while also gain on Jim Westerfield, who right now is in 13th place. So this is going to be potentially a huge run for the 41 if he can keep all 4 on the asphalt.
And I misspoke there, Getty. That was actually for position. The pit stops jumble things up, and lose
Right.
track of where
Well, no, it's
but that was fourth position. Wade's still on the lead lap.
I definitely thought that too. I didn't correct you for a reason. It's because it certainly seemed, you know, with how fast these two drivers have been. By the way, it's weird that just these brothers are absolutely handling this track. Maybe they're cheating. I don't know. We should probably get them tested after this track. Pull a Ross Chastain. These drivers are putting on an incredible show. Last year, at this track, it was Wade Hustad, Eric Wolf, putting on a great show, and it's funny because these guys are just eating them alive. And if Richard Lucky, Chris Lucky both have those rookie stripes, so they're new to DRL this season. This is the first time that these drivers are competing with the Lucky brothers at a road course, and this is something that these guys are going to be keeping in mind as they head to places like the Glen and to Charlotte. Oh, the 77 gets a little loose there.
Kept it under control, though. Good save. Good save from Chris.
Right. Now, again, brothers or not, even you and I have been friends for 10 plus years, Andy. Friends or not, brothers or not, catching a gentleman and passing him is going to be completely different. And if the 41 doesn't make a mistake, it's going to be very, very hard to pass him, as we haven't seen a pass for the lead on the track. We only saw it in the pits. As the 41 of Chris Lucky is going to be coming up on a little bit of lap traffic here. That is
might
20.
Be a chance for Chris to gain that time back. Although they caught him in turn, I believe that's turn 7, the one you want to pass in.
Yeah,
so
literally the best place to catch a lap car, and then of course they were very respectful and pulled over. But now Chris Lucky is stuck behind him in the S's, which is that goes from being very ideal to the 41 to being worst case scenario for the 77. And that look at that huge gap that he was able to pull in just that one little section.
Really opened that up there.
Now let's take a little trip through the field here, ladies and gentlemen. We've talked about our leaders enough, but back in third we've got Logan McAnally. After the pit stops have cycled through, he has found himself in third, just in front of Eric Wolf. Again, the difference, as I can tell you here, Logan spent 41.6 seconds on pit road. Eric Wolf spent 42.1, and that is the difference. And as you remember, these guys were battling for third before the pit stops, but the positions were reversed. So again, these pit stops being very fruitful for some and not as great for others, as those two drivers have swapped positions. Now let's go back here to the 24 of Eric Wolf. His fastest lap time is a 132.3, and he just ran a 132.37, so he's running about as fast as he has all race long, behind the 88, and that is for fourth spot. Now behind these guys is the 5, in fifth place is the 12 of Mike Springer. That last time by, he was actually a couple tenths slower than Eric Wolf, and he will be trying to maintain this top 5 spot, as he is 14 seconds ahead of this driver, and that is Wade Hustad, our points leader, the 32 S2R driven vehicle of Wade Hustad. Behind him also S2R teammate of Thomas Harmon, last week's winner at Pocono. John Theodore, as we mentioned, every race leading up to the playoffs is going to be very huge for him. Right now he's in a great spot. He is 9 seconds ahead of the closely of Spencer Tart, who follows him very closely in the point standings, as we'll highlight Spencer Tart, who has gotten past Chris James in the 82. These two drivers, this is for position, ladies and gentlemen, so these two drivers trying to duke it out for 9th spot. And behind both of them in 11th is Dustin Musil, trying to rebound from that little spin in the hairpin there, just in front of Mike Lemon, and both of these drivers are a lap down. So there are 10 cars on the lead lap. Jim Westerfield in 4th, Taylor Butcher Benjamin in, or not 4th, Jim Westerfield, the 4 car, in 13th, Taylor Butcher Benjamin in 14th, and Bill Edwards still on track. Drivers that have retired: Joseph Helt, who was involved in that lap 1 incident, and Gary Cronenwet, who we saw that he had a little bit of damage. He was involved in that incident as well. So, Andy, we've cycled through pit stops, and the lead between Richard Lucky and Chris Lucky has kind of or the interval has kind of just about stayed the same, but you know, it's basically going to come down to who makes the last mistake. Not the most mistakes, but who makes the last one. And with just, I believe, 16 laps to go, there's plenty of time for one of these drivers to make that win, you know, that winning move or that race losing move.
Chris within a second, so that's got to be putting some pressure on Richard. But he seems to just be, like we talked about earlier, running his own pace. But Chris asking a lot right now, maybe, and we'll see how that affects his car later on.
Well, and we also,
like you said. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please finish your thought.
Oh no, I was just say, like you said, it's about being patient, lining up those spots. Where catching him's one thing. Now he's on his bumper. What can he do from here? Can he get around him?
Well, and
to be seen.
Yeah, right. No, to be seen indeed. As the 41 kind of tracks up a little bit, we saw at the tail end of that last run, the 41 car was actually, you know, a little bit faster on the longer run, especially on that first stint. So the 77 is catching him now, but is he using up a little bit too much stuff as the 41 goes wide? Battle for the lead.
There he goes. There's the door. There's the mistake you're talking about. Yep. Or maybe that's Richard saying, "Hey, you're a little quicker now. I know what I got on those long runs. Let's."
Right. Well, and Richard desperately needs this win, because a win here tonight would make him our 6th different winner on the season, but one win guarantees you a playoff spot. And his brother Chris Lucky already has 2 victories, so I think that was more a mistake than you know, camaraderie and generosity. As
that's a good point.
But you know, as I mentioned just a little bit ago, we'll see what happens at the tail end of this run. You know, if Richard Lucky can keep him within striking distance, he was a little bit faster, you know, on laps, you know, 17 to 21 of that last run here. But we'll see. It seems as if Chris Lucky, as soon as he's gotten past his brother there, he's already gapped him by a full second.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see again on that long run if Richard can keep his focus and know that he has a long run pace over Chris, or
right.
Maybe Chris wasn't showing his full hand earlier, and he's see how this one plays out here.
Well, and let's go back to this battle here for 9th and 10th.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a small note, during all that mess, Chris James was able to get around Spencer at some point.
Now, watching this battle unfold, ladies and gentlemen, we do have just 14 laps to go. And look at that, the breaking point there and the hairpin. Spencer Tart gains a great amount of time, but coming off, it seems like 82 is getting that great drive off. So we'll pay attention to this battle and other battles here on the track. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a quick commercial break, and when we return, we'll bring you the finale of the Sonoma 110 for the DRL Cup Series here on DRL TV.
and he's going to get them all done with. What amazing.
Lead to the inside goes Logan Cloudman is going to touch in. Pit press.
saved it.
What a save.
Look to the outside and Cronkite goes off. De Jong into second place.
I'm going for the switchback. Oh, pinpoint driving.
It's howling down to the inside.
I trying this contact though.
And wide left of the racetrack. Chris Leonard drives it back down underneath, and he takes that second spot right back. Joker goes to Garrett Lowe.
Garrett Lowe should take victory with all that contact.
He's going to try and make the move around the outside the parabolica. That's not going to work, but he's going to try and get the cut back here. Get the run out the parabolica. That's beautifully done there. Makashube, there's a little bit of door banging as well.
And welcome back to DRL TV's presentation of the DRL Cup Series at Sonoma for the Sonoma 110. We are just now crossing 10 laps to go. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been a crazy, awesome race. Great racing. We had a great battle for the lead. Chris Lucky has gapped Richard Lucky by 3.7 seconds. So he's trying to put the cap on what would be his third victory of the season. Of course, he was also our pole sitter too. So, I mean, this is a great statement race here from the 77, which would honestly put him in that elite conversation for a championship favorite, as last season we had, Wade Hustad, Anthony Burrows. Anthony Burrows is not here tonight. He will join us again in 2 weeks. But this is, what a statement win. We've seen all week in auto sports just these commanding leads. We saw in the IndyCar series, Alexander Rossi winning by almost 20 seconds. We saw Lewis Hamilton winning by over 20 seconds, I believe. And here tonight on this road course, Richard and Chris Lucky are leading by 16 seconds over third place Logan McAnally. Just a commanding run by these two gentlemen, and it's you can certainly tell they're brothers, because they both have a great respect for this car here, Andy. Now, Andy, you are a special guest here tonight, so you may not be familiar with what is tradition around here in DRL TV. At least once during a normal oval segment, we like to do something called Revving It Up. But tonight, we're going to do a special road course edition of Rev It Up, ladies and gentlemen, as we let the cars do the talking, and, you've heard me enough. So let's let the music begin. And we are back. For a moment there, we were watching a great battle between the 8th and 9th place cars of Chris James and John Theodore. But now we're on board with Richard Lucky. I'm going to do that a few more times at least, getting their names mixed up, as he's trying to hunt down his brother Chris Lucky, who's in the lead. That gap is starting to shrink just a little bit, but there's only a few laps left as they enter that hairpin here. 2.4 seconds is the gap from first to second. And now the gap from second to third is still at 18 seconds. Kind of unfortunate for Logan McAnally, because this run so far, Andy, he's really, that gap with the leaders, talking about first and second place, hasn't really changed all that much. But he was so far behind before the pit stop started, he's not really going to be able to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think that the ship has sailed, so to speak, for Logan in this race, which is unfortunate because he does have good pace. It seemed like he had the car, so he's either learned as he's gone and gotten as fast as these guys, or was just caught up there early and couldn't get the passes. The cars didn't fall his way this race, but third, still a strong showing for Logan.
No, and I mean, just trying to think back to the first part of the race when he was kind of around traffic. He's trying to hunt down Eric Wolf. I think now that he's kind of on his own, really running his own race, coming into his own pace here, I think maybe, if you're not super familiar with the Dynasty Racing League, no, let me try that again. You don't have to be very familiar with the Dynasty Racing League to know that Eric Wolf, he's one of our, he's a past champion. If there is a Hall of Fame, he is certainly in the Hall of Fame for the DRL. And maybe Logan, trying to chase the 84, might have, put him in a spot where he kind of used up his stuff here. But right now, without the pressure of having to deal with the 24 of Eric Wolf, who is now 4.7 seconds back of Logan McAnally, setting his own race pace here. That time he was 2/10 of a second slower than the leaders. This time by, however, we will see what his
gained a little time this time by, maybe.
Right, and
we were talking. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying that last time by he was as fast as Richard Lucky, who's in second. So great run for him. Even though as competitive as he is, I know third wouldn't be bad, but it's the fact that he's third and 21 seconds behind the leader. I think that's going to be the old, the shot to the pride, the shot to the ego portion of it. But
earlier in the race, we were commenting a lot on him stepping the back end out, sliding around. Maybe he wasn't trying to get around Eric, wasn't as patient as he could have been, and was asking a little too much for that set of tires, and that kind of set him back. But he's actually gained quite a bit on Eric now that the pit stops have gone through.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the fastest lap of the race is not Chris Lucky or Richard Lucky. It is Logan McAnally. He ran a 131.0, and that's 3/10 of a second faster than anyone else on the track. Now, unlike F1, you don't really get a bonus point for having the fastest lap, but it just goes to show that he can get around here pretty fast at least one time. So he had the speed, but right now he just doesn't have the time, as we are 6 laps away from ending the Sonoma 110 with Chris and Richard Lucky out front, and that gap between first and second that was down to 2.3 is now climbed back to 3.3 seconds. So we'll keep an eye on that. But for right now, the battle on the track, the closest battle is still between John Theodore and Chris James, and that is for 8th and 9th spot. And again, pulling up these standings, John Theodore sits 6 points ahead of Chris James in the point standings. And so, obviously John Theodore wants to, kind of grow that gap as much as possible. And one way to do that is certainly to get around the 82. But easier said than done, as we've seen tonight. I mean, we've really only seen a couple actual passes. And, a lot of that, like we saw the 41 get passed by the 77 for the lead, but that was because of a mistake. That wasn't, a clean overtake, in the truest definition. But speaking of the 77, let's look behind John Theodore, and he's getting ready to go a lap down here. Just That's
But
crazy.
the battles we've shown too, well, it's less of a battle now, and maybe John will let him. Yeah, he's gonna let him go. I was gonna say there might be some drama with John battling Chris there, but Chris got a little bit of gap on him, and
Yeah, and letting the leader go by at the top of that hairpin certainly didn't help his cause either, as that allows Chris James to get out to a 2-second lead. Of course, John did the great thing, the wise thing, and that is pull over for the 77. But one thing that John might be able to take advantage of is following the 77, maybe kind of see where he's losing time to the leaders, and that might be in the end a great time to observe, get a little bit faster as he tries to chase down that 82 for position once again, because there's no better way to get faster than to watch the fastest guy on track go around this very technical, this very difficult road course. And again, that lead, wow, with 5 laps to go, that lead between Chris and Richard Lucky has all of a sudden exploded to almost 5 seconds, as Chris now has gotten around the 82 of Chris James.
John able to reclaim a little bit of his lost time there.
Mm-hmm. No,
That was
like
a good spot for Chris to catch him, though. That's where you want to pass people, is that diamond apex in turn 7.
Yeah, no, we've seen catching lap traffic really anywhere else has kind of been a struggle for the leaders, as catching them in the S's. We saw that huge gap that Richard Lucky was able to get from Chris just after the green flag pit stops, just because he caught that lap traffic in the S's, whereas Richard Lucky caught him in that turn 7, that double apex left-hander heading into the S's. So yeah, that was a huge difference here. And since those guys have regrouped, John Theodore back down to 1.1 second over behind Chris James. Currently, that is the closest battle, but there will possibly be a battle heating up for 4th place, as Mike Springer is starting to reel in our past champion Eric Wolf in the 24. Let's take a lap with Mike Springer and kind of see what he's feeling. Again, qualified 5th. He runs 5th, but he's trying to reel in the 24 of Eric Wolf, as that gap is now at 1.6 seconds. And that last time by, he was almost a second faster than Eric Wolf, so a little bit of a slip up there by Eric is allowing Mike Springer to get larger and larger in the 24's rear view mirror.
And we'll see how well Mike has managed his tires. Eric hasn't had too much to race for, but I'm sure he's been trying to catch Logan, so we'll see if maybe that might have cost him. Mike's able to get him here, but
well, let's take this quick opportunity to again remind you this is the Sonoma 110. The next race will be the SGK Racing 200, also sponsored by Fatal Concepts. That is at Chicagoland next week. We get rid of this, this road course style for a little bit, and then we return to the oval racing that most of these guys know and love. And of course, as I say every week, this is going to be a new track with this new grip, downforce, and reduced horsepower package that the guys have been seeing on these ovals. Tonight they have full power, they have full horsepower, but they still have the that downforce, that downforce package that we see at every racetrack. And so that will be Chicagoland this time next week. Again, subscribe and get hit that notification bell. You'll be notified on your phone or whatever device you use when we go live on YouTube. Again, it's normally at the same time every day, or every broadcast, about 8:20, 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern. Now, our next broadcast is going to be Wednesday. No race tomorrow for the Grand National guys. They have a nice, well-deserved week off. A Gateway 150 for the truck race at the Darlington-esque egg-shaped Gateway. Of course, that's in Madison, Illinois, just near St. Louis, Missouri. So the Gateway 150 on Wednesday, 150 laps. That's going to be a crazy race. That's one of those weird ovals. You know, we're going to see downshifting. We're going to see a lot of different braking points. And as we saw last week in the Truck Series at Iowa, that can wreak a lot of havoc on the field, as that ended up being kind of a caution fest early on. Hopefully not so much this next Wednesday, but that is our lineup for this week, ladies and gentlemen. All series next week will be at Chicagoland, and it will be broadcast to you live here on DRL TV. Now, getting back down to the track, Mike Springer kind of starting to reel him in just a little bit, but you know, with 2 laps to go, Andy, he's running out of time.
He's running out of time, and I'm watching this battle back here between John and Chris, and they are just going at it. And unfortunately for Richard, if he had any hopes, this battle's just put him out of it for sure. But man, what great racing from Chris and John here. John got around him, and he locked up the tires going into the hairpin. Chris was able to get back under him, so I don't think we're done. I think we got more here.
We will keep our eyes on this battle, ladies and gentlemen. The lead has now grown to 10 seconds between Chris and Richard Lucky. A little bit of off track there. That is John Theodore. That will be, barring a mistake from the 82, Chris James. That will all but wrap up his hopes of claiming that 8th spot from the DPR-driven Ford Mustang of Chris James. So John Theodore, again, a great run here at Sonoma. I'm sure if we spoke to him, this would be, you know, a small victory in and of itself, and I believe most of the guys feel that way. A lot of these oval-focused guys come to a road course like this, and just, you know, as you mentioned, you know, at the top of the broadcast, Andy, they got a goal in mind. Most of the time, it's just to finish, but we will keep the focus on our leader. That is the 77 of Chris Lucky, qualified first, led most laps, and has currently scored in first. With just about a mile to go here at the Sonoma 110. What a great run this has been, Andy. I mean, look at that car. It's absolutely pristine, and
spotless.
He, along with his brother, have, you know, conquered the rare feat of having 0 incident points at a road course, which means not once did they go off the track, not once did they bump into another object. Just absolutely flawless, and the last 10 laps of Chris Lucky's Sonoma debut here in DRL really says a lot, as he extended that lead by, you know, 7 or 8 seconds, once he passed his brother, and as he's turning down.
Yeah, credit to Chris here. Richard got him on the pit stop, and Chris said, "Hey, I think I can still beat you. I'm not done yet." And Richard slipped up a little bit, and Chris took advantage.
So the ever-growing Lucky rivalry has officially ended, with Chris Lucky getting the best of him here at Sonoma, and we will watch as Richard Lucky finishes second. Put our focus here on the 88 of Logan McAnally, and it looks like Mike Springer wasn't really able to catch the 24. That will be about as close as he gets, barring an engine failure or something. That will be a top 5 for Mike Springer. That'll be a great race, and our defending champ Wade Hustad will finish 6th. Thomas Harmon 7th, and Chris James will be in 8th after John Theodore, with that little bit of slip up there ends up costing him an opportunity at really, you know, having a shot at getting to the 82. But as the 77 does his victory lap, and most likely his victory burnout here, again, can't state how, the obvious, really, how awesome that ride was. And to have a pure white car and bring it to a road course is brave enough as it is, but look how clean and pretty that thing is.
He didn't touch a thing.
Nope. The only thing he touched was the finish line first several times tonight. As we will enter the post-race portion of the DRL TV broadcast, we'll bring in our top 3 finishers for an interview, and then we will bid you adieu, watching Chris Lucky here again, our race winner. As he brings it down to the hairpin.
expecting some donuts here. And
Yeah, Chris Lucky with a
area there.
celebratory swerve. And again,
While he's there, while he's there, a good recovery for Chris James. He got some I wouldn't say significant, but he got some unwanted front end damage, and he was able to recover and finish in 8th. So good for those guys to come back and get him a top 10. Spencer also. Pretty
gnarly damage there from the from that first incident, and of course there probably were several other incidents that we weren't able to see, but that one was certainly the most notable, as it sent one S2R teammate careening into another, and that all but ended Joseph Helt and Garrett Cronenwett's day. But let's bring in our third place finisher, and that is Logan McAnally. Logan, a great run tonight, man. You finished third, you started fourth, but at the end of the day, even though you had the fastest lap of the race, what was it about that first stint that brought you maybe a little bit more challenging, racing conditions than what you expected?
I don't think anybody was going to beat the Lucky Brothers, and it was slick out there. That first stint, I kind of had to get used to the car because I had not ran anything here this week.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could definitely tell that as the race went on, you definitely got a lot stronger. And once you kind of didn't really have to deal with battling the 24, you were kind of just able to, focus and, really have an incredible pace there at the end. Now, if we were to start this race over right now, knowing what you know, would you have anything for the Lucky Brothers?
I might have something for Richard, but not for Chris. He's flying out there.
Now, this is a long season here in DRL, but, what kind of message does this send when we go to, road courses being a specialty track? We only go to 3 this season. What kind of thing, where does this set the bar as far as, what you need to do to prepare going to the next 2 road courses and seeing how fast the competitors were that finished ahead of you?
Well, Watkins Glen is kind of you got the bus stop and everything, and the Roval is just a whole different thing by itself. So
yeah.
Sonoma is a whole different monster too. But you just have to be really easy on the throttle and make sure you don't burn up the rears off the corners.
Right. Well, while we have you, Logan, give us any shout-outs that you might have for the viewers here that are watching DRL TV.
Family, Nationwide, Buddy Austin on Mac Motorsports with me. About it.
Awesome. Well, Logan, we appreciate your time. Great run tonight. Even though you finished several seconds behind the guys, a third place finish is still a third place finish, and that will help you, on your quest, to earning a great playoff spot as we move forward into the season.
Yes, sir.
All right, that was the 88 Logan McAnally. Great run tonight. Very entertaining first stint, as we saw his. He had definitely the most entertaining car to watch as he was whipping that thing around. Now let's bring in our second place runner, Richard Lucky. Richard, do you have a copy here? This is the DRL TV booth.
Yes, sir. I got you.
Well, you qualified second behind your brother Chris, and for a moment it seemed as if you played the strategy right. You were a little bit more aggressive on pit road. You came out just ahead of him. And during that first stint, I noted that at the tail end of that first stint, you were actually picking up time on Chris. But as that second stint unfolded, the lead, all exponentially increased between you and Chris. What was it about that second stint that was so much different from the first?
Well, I think it's because I short pitted him, so he had 1 lap fresher tires, and that's gonna carry over throughout the entire next run just a little bit. I mean, even if it's only a 10th a lap, you're going to see it. And then it shows the margin of victory of 12 seconds, but realistically, that was only going to be 3.5 seconds. I was trying to be respectful to John Theodore and Chris James, who are running really hard for a position. I had nothing to gain and nothing to lose there, so I was just going to let them battle it out.
Well, yeah, and we noted that too, that those guys had been battling it out basically since the beginning of time, it seemed like. But you and your brother, you put on a great show tonight, and I'm not sure if this is your best finish of the season, but I mean, it's obviously got to tie it because you haven't won yet, and a second place will help you in the standings. But showing that you both have this incredible speed here at road courses, is there an oval or maybe another road course going forward that you really feel confident that you'll get that first win of the season?
I would look for, if I'm going to win in this league, I mean, there's a lot of good guys in this league. If I'm going to win, it's probably going to be on a road course. Me and Chris used to run a V8 supercar league where we'd have to get up at like 2 or 3 o'clock on a Saturday morning to go run with the Aussies. So we love road courses, but
That's awesome.
I don't know, maybe, yeah, maybe Watkins Glen or the Roval or something. I might be able to pick one up, but I got second last week, so this ties my best finish of the year. So I don't know, maybe I'll get one.
Well, I mean, 2 second-place finishes in a row. Hopefully you can keep that momentum as we go back to oval racing at Chicagoland Speedway next week. And we hope to see you there, buddy. A great run tonight. Give us any shout-outs that you might have.
Just a shout out to Chris for helping me. I mean, he's pretty much coached me all week to get around how to get around this place. Thanks to you guys in the booth for doing the broadcasting. Thanks to everyone at DRL and everyone that showed up tonight. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate it, sir, and we will see you next week at Chicagoland.
Yep, see you then.
And we will move him down to his race channel and bring up today's winner, and that is Chris Lucky. Chris, great run tonight. You absolutely, I mean, you really dominated. You got the pole. You came out, and especially that last part of the run, on that second stint, you just you really made sure that there was no mistake as to who was going to win this race. After those pit stops, though, because you guys were so similar on that first stint, talking about you and Richard, were you a little worried when he passed you through that sequence of green flag pit stops?
No, we had talked about it, this week leading up to the race and what pit strategies were going to look like, and I knew he was going to short pit me. And I knew he was faster than me, so I was going to let him have the short pit so I could have the fresher tires. And I knew if I came out anywhere within about 2 seconds of him, he was going to be in trouble and have the most stressful 20 laps of his life.
No.
He was able to clear. He was able to clear a couple lap cars there. I think it was Musel and Lemon, and get a little bit of a gap. And once I got back up to his bumper, he knew it was over. So he didn't make it too hard on me.
Now, on a side note, maybe not a lot of the viewers know this, but you guys obviously share a race channel. How, as guys that compete on iRacing and in this league week after week, does it ever get a little touch and go when you guys are battling so closely like that? And obviously you have open communication with one another.
Yeah, we never talked. The only time we didn't say a word to each other all race, other than right after I came out right behind him after the pit stops there, he was like, "Please don't pass me. Let me lead a lap."
Well, I mean, he got the job done, and as did you. You get your third victory of the season, which sets you up very nicely. If the playoffs were to end today, that sets you up very nicely for being tied with the league lead in wins, which, if you follow DRL history at all, being tied with the Wade Hustad for wins, that's kind of a huge feat in and of itself because he is our defending champion. So, what kind of confidence do you have going into the playoff portion of our season, being seated probably near the top?
Yeah, I definitely have a chance. When we unload here at Sonoma or any road course, I expect to win. But I'm only an average oval racer, so we don't have any road courses, I don't think, in the chase. So I need to work on my oval package and kind of get my act together. I'm a top 5 guy, but sometimes if things go my way, I can sneak out a win. So we'll see.
Well, appreciate your time tonight. A great win, just dominating effort, and of course, this really sets the tone for the next 2 road courses that we go to, being the Glen and the Charlotte Motor Speedway later on this season. But while we have you, please give us any shout-outs that you might have for anyone watching or for anyone in the broadcast.
Yeah, thanks Andrew and Getty for doing the booth tonight. My brother ran a real good hard-fought race. And lastly, and most importantly, David Wellborn. I know he put on the message board that his wife is going to be going in the next couple weeks for a life-changing surgery. So I know I'm not alone. I know our whole DRL family's praying for you, Dave. And if you're listening, thanks, guys.
Awesome, Chris. We certainly appreciate the shout out and also appreciate the show that you put on tonight. And we will see you next week at Chicagoland Speedway, where hopefully you can keep this momentum up.
Absolutely. Thanks, fellas.
And I'll ask Chris Lucky, our race winner, leading 38 of 44 laps. Richard Lucky leading some laps as well when he came out at the pit road. In front of his brother, Eric Wolf, was able to lead some laps. And, it says a lot when only 7 cars finish on the lead lap of a 2-mile track. So those guys had pace that, well, I don't think we've seen here in DRL at a road course. Andy, what takeaways do you have from this race heading into not only other road courses but also next week at Chicagoland?
Next week at Chicagoland. I'm interested to see what kind of momentum this does for Chris. Like he was talking about, he's a top 5 car. Does this kind of give him the confidence? Maybe he's a top 3 car next week. As we progress to these other road course races, the Glen and the Roval, is it going to be the Lucky Brothers show, or maybe Eric steps up and maybe Mike's in there? I think we got some exciting times ahead of us here.
Right. No, I mean, Sonoma is so difficult. It's not surprising to see 1 or 2 drivers really separate themselves from the pack. Watkins Glen's going to be a little bit different, normally a lot closer racing. That is a very favorite track of most drivers as far as road courses are concerned. Much faster. Of course, the ever popular bus stop, and I believe, don't quote me, but I believe this year the Cup Series runs the boot layout. I feel like I heard that somewhere. Again, don't quote me on that. Maybe I should start fact checking before I start spitting out information. But boot, whether they run the boot or the classic layout of the Glen, the Lucky Brothers kind of made a statement tonight. And here you are, ladies and gentlemen. This is all the names that are involved in running the Dynasty Racing League and also creating DRL TV. And of course, Chris kind of beat me to it. David Wellborn is experiencing some troubling times with he and his wife. So if if religion is your thing, please make sure that you're praying, for that couple to have strength to get through what they're getting through. A big life-changing surgery. So David, you're in our thoughts, you're in our prayers, and he's been with DRL TV since day one. He helped build it from the ground up. So. He's a huge force in Dynasty Racing League and Dynasty Racing League TV. So we're gonna miss you, buddy. If you have to take any time away, and if you do, obviously, you take all the time you need. Your spot at the microphone will forever be reserved. But changing our focus to tonight's race, Andy, it was a pleasure. Thank you for coming in. It's not often I get to broadcast with someone that I race with and someone that I've been close friends with for 10 years. So great. Thank you for coming in, stepping up, and you can see me and Andy take on the Grand National Series next Tuesday. But for now, our next broadcast will be Gateway 150, where I will be broadcasting the race from the weird, I don't know who thinks of some of the layouts of these tracks. The weird oval of Gateway, turns 1 and 2, heavily banked, with a lot of braking and downshifting, and turns 3 and 4, similar to like the Milwaukee Mile. Like I said, it's a very Darlington-esque track. Both ends of the track are vastly different, so the winner of that race is going to be the person that can, really nail all the aspects of such a challenging track, and that will be very exciting. And again, please subscribe, that way you can be notified anytime we go live, which will again the next time be on Wednesday at 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into DRL TV. I'm Getty Buckner alongside Andy Short, and we will see you on Wednesday.
So long, everybody.